Right now, you have one person you'd call at 3 a.m. if something went wrong. Not your parents, not your coworkers, one specific person. You don't even have to think about who it is. Their name just appears. But almost nobody asks where that instinct actually came from. The answer goes back further than friendship as an idea even existed. For over 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors lived or died based on whether they had that one person. Not a tribe, not 100 allies, one. So what was that bond actually doing for them, biologically? The answer changes everything we think we know about loyalty, loneliness, and why losing a close friend can feel like losing a piece of your own body. Let's start with the brain, because the brain is the reason any of this makes sense. Your brain is expensive. It burns roughly 20% of your body's energy while making up only about 2% of your body weight. Nothing that costly survives millions of years of evolution by accident. It survives because it's solving a problem that matters more than almost anything else: staying alive around other people. In the 1990s, anthropologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford started comparing brain scans and social groups across dozens of primate species. He found a pattern that held up again and again. The bigger the neocortex, the outer layer of the brain responsible for complex thought, the bigger the social group that species could manage. Chimpanzees max out around 50, baboons less than that. Humans, according to Dunbar's calculations, can maintain meaningful relationships with roughly 150 people. That's now called Dunbar's number, and it shows up in everything from military platoons to company org charts. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. That number isn't flat. It's not 150 equal friendships. Dunbar's own research broke it down into layers, like rings inside a tree. An outer ring of about 150 acquaintances, then 50 real friends, then 15 close friends, then at the very center, just 3 to 5 people. And inside that smallest group, one person almost always sits closer than the rest. Why would your brain bother building layers at all? Why not just treat everyone the same? Because tracking relationships costs mental energy, and energy has to be rationed. You cannot invest deeply in 150 people. You can barely do it for 5. So your brain does something ruthless. It ranks people. It decides, often without your permission, who gets your real trust, your real vulnerability, the version of you that isn't performing for an audience. This ranking system didn't start with humans. In the 1980s, primatologist Barbara Smuts spent years living among wild baboons in Kenya, and what she documented reads less like animal behavior and more like a soap opera. Baboons formed close, almost exclusive partnerships. 2 individuals who groomed each other far more than they groomed anyone else, who defended each other during fights, who searched for each other when separated. And it wasn't just emotional. In a long-term study led by researchers including Joan Silk, female baboons with strong, stable one-on-one bonds lived measurably longer and raised more offspring that survived to adulthood, compared to females with many loose, shallow relationships. Quality beat quantity. A single reliable ally outperformed a crowd of acquaintances. Now, picture your ancestors on the savannah. No locks, no emergency numbers, no hospitals, just open land, predators, rival groups, and each other. In that world, 150 distant acquaintances did not save your life when something moved in the grass at 3 a.m. One person who would wake up instantly, grab a stick, and stand next to you did. That's the strange part hiding underneath the sentiment. A best friend was never just emotional comfort. It was a survival technology, a second nervous system, someone whose alertness extended yours, whose strength backed up yours, whose memory filled in the gaps in your own. Your body still runs that old programming today. In the 2000s, neuroendocrinologist Robert Sapolsky, who spent decades studying wild baboon troops in Kenya, found that individuals with strong, stable social bonds had measurably lower baseline levels of cortisol, the body's main stress hormone, even while living in a habitat full of daily threats. Friendship, in a very literal sense, lowered the biological cost of simply being alive. Think about what that means. Your ancestors weren't choosing closeness because it felt nice. Their bodies were being chemically rewarded for forming specific, exclusive, reliable bonds. The good feeling was the mechanism. Evolution doesn't send you a memo explaining the plan. It just makes the useful thing feel good, so you keep doing it, without needing to understand why. That's why loneliness never feels neutral. It feels like an alarm going off. Starting in the early 2000s, social neuroscientist John Cacioppo published research showing that chronic loneliness activates the same neural threat detection systems as physical danger. Isolated participants in his studies showed elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep, and immune function that looked closer to someone under constant low-grade attack. Your brain, in other words, still treats social disconnection as a survival emergency, not a mood. For your ancestors, that reaction made perfect sense. A person without a close ally was more likely to be caught off guard, more likely to be exploited by rivals within the group, more likely to die young. So evolution wired the loss of a close friend to feel almost identical to physical pain. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger's brain imaging research in the early 2000s showed exactly that. Social rejection activates some of the same regions as physical injury. That specific hollow feeling when someone close pulls away isn't weakness. It's an ancient alarm still running in a modern brain. Here's the twist most people never expect. This best friend bond appears to be older and in some ways more selective than romantic pair bonding itself. Long before humans built marriage, inheritance, or formal partnership, close one-on-one alliances were already doing serious survival work inside primate groups. The single best friend may be one of the oldest relationship structures our species ever built, quietly running underneath every other social system that came afterward. And it wasn't only about predators. Group living meant political life, and political life meant betrayal was always possible. Coalitions shifted, alliances rose and collapsed overnight. In that unstable social landscape, having one person you could trust completely wasn't a luxury. It was the single fixed point in a world where almost everything else could turn on you. So, when you think about your best friend today, the one who knows exactly which version of your silence means something's wrong, you're not participating in some modern invention. You're running a program written hundreds of thousands of years ago on the African savanna, tested against leopards, rival bands, and long, dangerous nights. Every message you send them without thinking, every time you feel that specific, irreplaceable relief of being fully known by one person, that's not sentiment layered on top of biology. That is the biology. Layers of neocortex evolved to track exactly this kind of bond. Hormones evolved to reward exactly this kind of closeness. Threat detection systems evolved to punish exactly this kind of loss. Ask yourself something. If you had to choose between 100 acquaintances and one person who would stand beside you in the dark, which one would actually keep you alive? Your ancestors already answered that question. thousands of generations before you were born. They answered it so thoroughly that the answer became permanent, written into the architecture of your brain. So deep, you never had to think about it. You just felt it every single time you reached for one particular name instead of all the others. Right now, you have one person you'd call at 3 a.m. if something went wrong. It turns out that instinct isn't modern at all. It's the oldest relationship technology your species ever built, and it's still running, right now, in the palm of your hand.